Well, I made this video a few months ago, but I decided that it actually worked best if I posted it near the end of December. Because whether we make New Year's resolutions or not, we are always thinking of January 1st as kind of a new start. And I know that sometimes we have a tendency to take on more than we should. But in this video, I think what you'll learn is it's better for your mental health if you make a list of the things you're just not going to do. Obsession with productivity isn't good for anybody, but for those of us with MS, it can really make life difficult. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of You and Me and Multiple Sclerosis. My name is Pam, and I've been living with multiple sclerosis for 38 years. A few episodes ago, I did a video on ways we can manage our fatigue. This time, I thought I would look at a recent email that I received that had a link to Courtney Carver's latest column. And Courtney Carver, I've talked about her before. She was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in, I think, 2006. But she's better known for her emphasis on simple living, because for her, overdoing it just makes her life with MS pretty miserable. But her tips help more than just those with MS. She's probably best known for something she calls Project 333. It's based on the idea that most of us wear 20% of our clothes 80% of the time. So she said, well, why don't you try just limiting yourself to 33 items of clothing for a 3-month period and see how that goes. She's not suggesting you get rid of all the other clothes, just put them aside and try to see if you can do 3 months, because that's about a season, right? And be happy with just those 33 items for 3 months. That's kind of an interesting idea. I've never tried it, but her goal is, again, to make life simpler so that you're not drowning in decisions before you even get up and get dressed in the morning. She had a very interesting column this time, which we're going to look at. But I do think multiple sclerosis seems to be characterized by, though not caused by, a sort of type A personality, somebody that really has a ton of energy and wants to get a lot done, and it often is highly productive. When I used to go see Dr. Swank, and I've done videos about him before, one of his tenets was that he'd never seen an MS patient who did not have that drive to be productive. Not saying it causes it, it's characterized by it. There's something that's kind of bound up with us. For all I know, it could be the fact that we're driven to be productive that causes our bodies to be more susceptible to MS. But anyway, let's look at what Courtney Carver has to say about avoiding that obsession with getting things done. So here's her post on her website, Be More with Less, How to Resist the Seduction of Getting Things Done. And I was very intrigued by that title, so I definitely wanted to read this one. And she talks about in here how she just felt overwhelmed, especially early on after her MS diagnosis, because she just still wanted to get as much done as she'd always gotten done. And she was having a harder time with that. It was too draining. As she says, I was going in so many different directions that it felt like I was failing at all of them. I felt like a terrible employee, a terrible mom, and a terrible wife. Yes, I felt terrible all the way around. And she says even the good things were causing the same kind of stress. She poses the question, have we made life all about getting things done? She says the pressure we put on ourselves shows up on our to-do lists, calendar, reminders, notifications, workflows, agendas, planners, and other productivity methodology. As I was listing off all that stuff, were you kind of ticking it off in your mind that, yep, I use that, yes, I have that, yes, yes, yes. I think most of us have some kind of method for keeping track of things, but I know some people are absolutely obsessed with planners, and other things that you buy to kind of track yourself, whether you're using something online or something on your smartphone or something on paper. People like to keep track of everything. They feel like they have too much to do. And those of us with MS, we are not immune from that. As she says, it suggests all we care about is getting things done. Perhaps if we have clarity about why we do what we do, we can make a shift, lower stress levels, and enjoy our daily work and life, or at least enjoy it more than we do now. I have to wonder what would happen if we began to prioritize joy over checking things off the list. And I think that's one of the addicting things about productivity is there is a certain joy that I get just from checking things off the list. But is that really a joy that is the best joy that I could be having? Probably not. Maybe I'm settling for something that isn't as good as it could be. What do you think? As she says in her email, the seduction of getting things done is when you feel you just can't resist doing one more thing, taking one more call, committing to one more project, saying yes one more time, so many times that you find yourself, like I was, completely overwhelmed. And the meat of her article is the list that she provides of 5 ways to resist the seduction of getting things done. In the first one, she says, don't lie to yourself about how much time you have. Time is pretty fluid, really. I think with certain activities, you realize that certain ones seem to make time go faster and certain activities seem to make time go slower. But the more productive you try to be, it tends to make time go way faster than you want it to. As she says, let go of the time scarcity trap you might be stuck in, always falling behind, catching up, and getting ahead. See multitasking for what it really is. When everything is important, nothing is. If you stay late at work or ignore your bedtime in the name of one more thing, let go of that lie and consider doing less. You know that one more thing is a lie. It's never one more thing, and it always takes longer than just a sec or just a minute. Oh, how true that is. Her second point is create a closing shift to mark the end of your day. I really like this one. She says, have a mini routine that signals the end of work or the end of the day. My daughter calls this a closing shift. For instance, after work, make a list of 3 things to do in the morning and turn on an out-of-office message. At home, wipe down all of your counters and light a candle. If you struggle to stop doing things and to prioritize your needs, experiment or practice. For instance, set an early bedtime and commit to it for 2 weeks. Check in and see if you are getting less done, feeling better, or if there are other pros or cons. What I've been doing is just planning on retiring. I guess we'll call it retiring because I don't really necessarily go to sleep, but I like to get into my jammies and then get into bed for probably several hours before we really do go to sleep. But I might read, I might look at my tablet, I might write a little bit, I might read the mail when it comes in, but I do it from bed and I do it in comfortable clothes so that I'm really kind of ramping down. So my end of the day is not an abrupt closing off of all activity. It's a slow ramp down. You might look at that. If it's hard to just say, I'm done for the day and really truly be done, then perhaps something like a slow ramp down might work for you. I'd be interested to know, do you think that that would be a way that you could end the taking on of new big projects, but not turn yourself off entirely for the remainder of the day? Her third point is stop trying to prove who you are by what you accomplish. And we've talked about this before in other videos where productivity is often tied to our self-image and whether we think of ourselves as worthwhile people. And it makes it very hard with a condition like multiple sclerosis because we are then limited in what we can do. Our physical bodies and oftentimes even our mental capacity is diminished from what we're used to, and we do not like it. We rebel against it because it affects our self-esteem. And it's so important to remember that we are worthwhile quite apart from what we might or might not accomplish at any given day or time frame at all. We may have had goals and dreams that we will have to recast a little bit, or maybe a lot, but we are still worthwhile, whether we make those things a reality or not. As she says, we feel the pressure within us and around us to think, look how much we got done. Am I good enough now? But really, this measuring system never works. At some point, all of the getting things done become counterproductive because you don't have the energy to do anything well. Doing more things does not make you a better person. It makes you a tired person. Instead, try slowing down or doing nothing at all. Have you ever tried just doing nothing at all? I guess I'm still working on that, because even if I'm physically doing nothing at all, I find that my mind is working probably harder than it should on things, and usually it's all the stuff that needs to be done that I could be doing if I wasn't just sitting there staring at the wall. But I think what she's trying to get at is that there is restorative value in doing nothing at all. If I hadn't read it in her column, I've read it elsewhere, that really that should become a daily practice to just take some period of time. Maybe it's only going to be 5 minutes at first, but try to expand it a little bit over time so that you do get used to the idea that doing nothing at all is okay. And in fact, you might feel a lot better if you don't allow yourself to worry and fret about all the things you should be doing when you're just sitting and doing nothing. I have a friend who really enjoys just looking out the window. She has a hummingbird feeder. During the nice weather, she loves to sit and watch the hummingbirds at the feeder. But even during the winter, there are bunnies in the backyard. There are other things to look at out the window. It's amazing how many hours she said she can spend just looking out the window. I'm not quite sure I could ever do it for that long, but I do think that's a great idea. Number 4, pretend the internet is broken. Oh, I like this one, but it does kind of strike fear into my heart, because here I sit on the internet even as we speak. So how would I possibly be able to manage without the internet? But she says, I think we all know where the biggest time sucks live. Email, social media, Googling things, breaking news, and all the browsing and scrolling. For a little while every day and a little bit longer every week, unplug. Create pockets of quiet, get bored, embrace solitude. Try a full day of being unplugged. You'll be shocked at how much time you get back. I actually was doing this very thing for quite some time, and I probably should get back into it again. I was using Sunday as the day that I just basically did not even pull up the internet at all. And it worked really well for quite a long time. And then my schedule changed to where it was pretty difficult. Since I teach Sunday school, I often do have to go out online, or I feel I do, to look up things on Bible Gateway or to print off some things for class. And maybe I just need to be a little bit more organized with my time and get all of that done the day before so that I don't really have an excuse to get on the internet. Because once you're on, let's face it, it's so easy to click over to something else and look at something else and watch something else, which is a downward spiral. And she says, unplug and you might feel a lot better. Her next point, number 5, is very important. Stop saying yes when your heart says no. As she says, most of the time when presented with an opportunity or invitation, I know the answer. My heart knows long before I take time to consider what I'll say. When I think about saying yes when my heart says no, I can feel it in my body. I might clench my teeth, squeeze my hands, or feel stress where there should only be light. For many years, I ignored those outward signs of inward struggle, but now I pay attention. Protect your heart and gently say no. Instead of saying yes when your heart says no, be honest. Your no doesn't need a lengthy explanation or apology. Saying no more honestly will give you a chance to say yes when it's time to say yes. I think that's a really good point, because I found too that if I tried to explain why I was saying no, it only opened the door to the other person to try and talk me out of it, to say, oh, well, we can take care of that problem, or no, well, you don't really need to worry about that. And so they're all the while trying to overcome all your objections so that you will ultimately say yes. The best thing is just to say no with no explanation. You might have to practice that, because it's hard to do that without sounding rude or abrupt, and I know that you don't really want to do that. It's important for our health to be able to say no and not feel guilty about it. That's the other piece. Can you say no and then truly feel later on like, oh, I probably should have said yes to that, because I'm sure they're going to have trouble finding someone to do it, or I can do that particularly well, or whatever. Try not to feel guilty. There's no merit in it. You're not gaining anything by feeling guilty about it. You're not getting the job done any more than you would have if you had just said no and not feel guilty. So that's my advice. Try not to feel guilty about it. If you could do it and you really honestly felt you had the energy, you would. It's time for someone else to take on that task. It doesn't have to be you. Well, I thought those were really good tips. I hope that you found something in there. I think especially for those of us who are newly diagnosed, tips to avoid being obsessed with productivity, I think we need to pay a lot of attention, because it is so easy for us to just feel like we can do, oh, one more thing. I could put that in my calendar, or I could add that to my to-do list. And maybe we do need to think twice about that, because we do want to manage our energy. It is the most precious commodity that we have. In keeping our quality of life as high as it possibly can be, despite our MS, there are many ways that we can make our life a little better. I've covered that in a number of videos that I've made, and this is yet another way that we can do it. I'd be curious to know, is this something that you deal with, this constant feeling like, oh yeah, let me try just one more thing. I'll put one more thing. I'll put a little bit more effort into this, or I'll say yes to that committee or this activity or whatever. Do you find yourself doing that and then regretting it later on? I know that I have learned that, and I wonder if that is something that you're still in the process of learning. Let me know. And that's all I have for you today. But until I see you again in my next video, take really good care of yourself.